The expanse of space was immense. Prior to the SS Ironclad, a single artifact from a past time floated through the dark like a ghost in the emptiness, a relic of humanity's lost age. Its scarred hull, worn by years of inactivity, shone dimly under the faint glow of distant stars. Elias Drake, captain, stood tall on the bridge. His steady eyes gazed at the displays flickering with incoming data from Lieutenant Ava Thorne. Silence hung thick until it was broken. Thorne stood next to him, her piercing green eyes darting across the hovering fleet. The Zeldar, she began, her voice low but urgent, loom over Earth. Their primary forces here, dreadnoughts, cruisers, more fighters than I can count. Drake nodded, his jaw set in determination. The Zeldar Empire, ruthless conquerors who dominated the galaxy, had underestimated Earth, but they would soon fall. Thorne's voice trembled. Captain, the ironclad is outgunned, half our systems barely function, shields won't hold for 5 minutes, what do we have against that fleet? Drake's lips curled into a grim smile, a history of battles written in that expression. Before Thorne could argue further, a harsh voice crackled to life. Negative, commanded Drake in a rapid tone. There is none, the history of battles is destroyed. This is Commander Vorn of the Zeldar fleet, it mocked Earth's defenders. Surrender, you will be dust beneath our boots. Drake said nothing, his gaze fixed on the enemy ships, sleek and menacing. He knew what the ironclad carried, something the Zeldar could not foresee. Thorne hesitated. Captain, the singularity cannon, it hasn't been tested in decades, what if? We don't have a choice, Drake cut her off, his voice like steel. If we don't fire, Earth is lost. Thorne's hands danced over the controls. A low rumble shook the ship as the ancient weapon awoke. The hum deepened, energy coiled like a predator about to strike. Power at full, Thorne reported. Drake's hand hovered over the firing control, his voice dropped to a whisper. Let them laugh. He flicked his wrist. The singularity cannon roared to life, a beam faster than light ripped through space. The Zeldar fleet never saw it coming, the lead dreadnought crumpled, ships twisted and vanished into a vortex of darkness. Panic erupted. What have you done? Vorn's voice screamed through the comms. Drake stared at the wreckage. They underestimated us. Thorne's voice trembled in awe. That was just one shot, Captain. How many more do we have? Jonah spoke up first along with Miles. Drake turned away from the view, his expression unreadable. Enough. Silence fell across the bridge as the crew processed the moment. Humanity was not defeated, not yet. The pilot Zeldar regrouped, determined to strike back, but the ironclad, old and forgotten by time, stood ready. Launch the decoys, Drake ordered. Thorne hesitated, they haven't been tested. I'll do it. The decoys flickered to life, scattering false signals enough to confuse the Zeldar sensors. From the comms, Vorn's icy voice returned. You cannot escape. Your weapon bought you time, nothing more. Drake stepped forward, his voice cold and unwavering. We still have firepower you haven't seen. The Zeldar hesitated. Drake could hear it, the doubt, the calculation, they were afraid. When the enemy finally struck, the ironclad shook violently. Shields failed. Sparks erupted across the bridge. Captain, they're adapting, Thorne warned, sweat beading on her brow. We won't survive another volley. Drake's jaw tightened. Prepare the cannon for one more shot. Sir, if they hit us during the charge. I'll do it. The seconds stretched into eternity. The Zeldar fleet closed in, weapons primed. Ready, Thorne whispered. Drake didn't hesitate. Fire. The singularity cannon unleashed its fury again. Darkness devoured the Zeldar fleet, ships crumbled and vanished. The survivors scattered in terror. Air filled the chamber, but 6 survived. Exit mode, silence fell. Drake exhaled a breath he didn't know he was holding. Thorne looked up at him, exhaustion on her face. We bought time, Captain, but they'll come back. Drake nodded, eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Zeldar were gone for now. We'll be ready, he said softly. The ironclad, scarred but unbroken, hung in the void like a defiant sentinel, proof that humanity would fight to the very end. We are unable to use the tactical display that flickers, Captain Elias Drake stated in a tight voice, clearly under stress. Lieutenant Thorne kept it up, her fingers twitching as she leaned over the console. Quickly, she attempted to redirect electricity to one additional direct shield among the others. Drake's jaw will get hit and we won't make it, she muttered, her eyes contracted as she looked at the screen. Zeldar was reorganizing their fleet, establishing a closer, more hostile formation. The forces of Vorn had fled briefly, but Drake knew they were only buying time, examining the ironclad's flaws before unleashing their final blow. Nevertheless, the decoys had only been successful once. Zeldar were intelligent, they would adjust. "What do you suppose?" Thorn's voice was soft, no longer just a tactical inquiry. She was observing him as she usually did, her calm mask breaking under pressure. Drake didn't respond right away. He couldn't afford to be uncertain, not now, not later. "We still have evidence they were this close," he murmured at last. "Cannon." The weight of the word hung between them. Thorn shivered, her head tilting with an unreadable expression. "The power levels of the cannon are erratic," she whispered. "Elias, you went too far. If we fight once more without recalibration, we could." Drake's eyes darkened as the implications tore through his thoughts. If they didn't act now, Zeldar would finish what they started. He approached the console, examining schematics alongside Thorn. Their only hope was the Singularity Cannon, a hopeful but precarious weapon of catastrophe. Thorn sighed, sweeping a strand of hair from her face. "Another thing, Captain, I've been running diagnostics." She tapped a few keys, a fresh image appearing on the screen. It was a detailed examination of the Zeldar ships. "You're really safe to go home, right?" she asked. "Their shields are replenishing more quickly than anticipated, but there's a flaw," Thorn continued, faint but there. "If we can overflow the matrix, we might remove their flagship's core." Drake's mind began to click the pieces together. And how likely is it that the cannon can hit with that level of precision? Thorn's lips pushed into a narrow line. "In its current condition, the only shot we have is this." When Thorn smiled, his face grew chromatically whiter. The decision's weight pressed hard on Drake's shoulders. The ship was barely surviving and the crew was worn out. Their adversary was closing in, yet this was something bigger than the conflict. It was a representation of humanity's fight for millennia. The Zeldar weren't just adversaries. They were the culmination of dominance, conceit, and the conviction that Earth was a backwater to be forgotten. Drake turned to the crew, looking into the eyes of those who had put their faith in him. Each carried the same burden, the same unspoken question: how much longer could they fight? "Cannon," Drake said, his voice a singularity of determination. "This time our target isn't the fleet, it's their flagship." A voice of incredulity echoed across the bridge. Thorn glanced at him, her astonishment clear. "You're serious?" he shots. Drake nodded. "If the flagship goes, the rest of the fleet will disintegrate. We won't have to sacrifice everything on the front." Thorn paused for a heartbeat before nodding, her determination hardening. "I'll begin the recalibration." The bridge erupted into a tornado of controlled chaos. The crew hurried to their posts, deliberate and sharp, systems regenerated. The Singularity Cannon's low hum grew louder, rumbling through the ship. Drake stared out into the expanse of space, his heart pounding in his chest. Vorn was a brilliant tactician, but Zeldar's flaw was their arrogance. They would never anticipate a damaged, ancient vessel attacking at the center of their command. 95%, Thorn called. "We'll be ready in 30 seconds." 30 seconds could be too long. A shout from the far side of the bridge pulled Drake's focus to the tactical display. A new formation was developing, dozens of Zeldar fighters approaching in tight, precise lines. "They're targeting our engines," Thorn said, her cheeks pale. "Hold steady," Drake shouted. "Keep shields up." Warriors' glowing weapons lit up the night as the Zeldar fighters got into position. Drake gripped the console's edge, the tension coiling like a wire ready to snap. 99%, cannon ready, Thorn yelled. Without hesitation, Drake gave the order. A Singularity cannon roared to life, a dazzling beam of energy piercing through the void. It struck the flagship's energy matrix with flawless precision. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a blinding explosion tore through the Zeldar fleet. The shock wave shredded nearby ships, scattering their formation like paper. The bridge went silent. Drake let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Thorn looked at him, her face worn and tired. "She bought me a gift and I gave it to you. We did it," Drake said softly, his eyes fixed on the debris field where the flagship had once been. "We bought ourselves some time." But he knew deep down it wouldn't last.